kilometres, the Penrite Oil Sandown 500. It's races 28, 29, 30 of our championship. We're at our second last event of our Virgin Australia Championship season. We wind it all up in Newcastle in several weeks. This is a track that has a wonderful history. First opened back here in 1962, endurance racing from 1964. And it's a straightforward layout with very fast straights on both sides of the lake here, north and south. Good for about 265, 270 kilometres an hour. Really bumpy and some big curbs to negotiate. 3.1 kilometres officially. Average speed just over the old 100 miles an hour at 163 kilometres an hour. It's a pretty short run down to turn one, and it narrows up dramatically on the left-hand side of the road, so it's very easy to make a mistake down here. There's a reasonable amount of runoff on the outside of turn one, but when you try to wobble back on, you've got to do it very carefully at turns 2, 3 and 4, where the cars fly over those curbs. It's all second gear stuff. Short, sharp acceleration run to turn 4 up on the platform, and then you turn left and begin to head north from just under 80 kilometres an hour, building speed. Turn 5 is easy flat, grab 6th gear, and just under 270 kilometres an hour when they get to the end of the reprofiled area at the back straight. The runoff area in turn 6 has had an enormous amount of energy, time and money spent to rectify what's been a hot spot from a safety standpoint in recent years. And then you begin the high-speed S's run down the hill where the cars are dancing at very high speed, trying to stop at turn 9 where locking a brake is easy, and then winding off towards the pit lane once again. The pit lane entry is a little tricky here because it's just to the right of turn 12. We've seen 1 or 2 moments there over the years as drivers get confused about who's in and who's out, and sector's important. The second sector, as you can see from the blue highlight line there on the graphic, is pretty much a drag strip, so it gives teams an opportunity to understand whether or not they're going okay when it comes to horsepower and aerodynamic trim. Cars are at 45 degrees. Yesterday was pretty much all about the emphasis around the co-drivers. They had sessions 1 and 3. Good afternoon, or in fact, good morning to you, Chaz Mostert. So he's in another car this weekend, and that car that he was driving at the Gold Coast written off. They will resurrect it at some point. And brand new car this weekend for Scott McLaughlin. So sessions 1 and 3 for co-drivers yesterday. Session 2 only for the primary drivers. There was the threat of weather. There was some unbelievable stuff that went through southeastern Melbourne. We're about 25 kilometres from the central business district out in the suburb of Springvale. But it kind of dodged around us until proceedings finished for supercars. Then the heavens opened. There was sleet, a big westerly wind, got incredibly wet. But we dodged it for the cars. There was a little bit of patchy wet on the road here and there. But the result of it, which Mark, Chris and I just discussed in the studio a few moments ago, was we saw lap record braking speed from David Reynolds' car, and had a chance to talk to Alistair McVeigh yesterday in the broadcast in one of the breaks that we had. And they've got those cars working. In fact, both the cars in the garage were super strong. Now, make the point also this weekend, it is retro round. So lots of people getting around in slightly unusual gear, and different race suits this weekend for David Reynolds, Luke Gilden, Will Brown, and Anton De Pasquale. Penrite Racing have got the JPS BMW colours from back in the 80s that Jim Richards, Frank Gardner, Tony Longhurst and the team used to great success. BMW M3s, BM 633s and 635s, a great era of the sport, and one where Mark Scaife, my colleague, and I were first trying to cut our teeth into the business to become racing drivers, so lots and lots of fond memories about those eras. Good morning again to you, Mark.
Good morning, Croppo. Certainly great memories and lots of effort by many of the teams, roughly a dozen cars that have got retro livery on them. You can see there the Aussie Mail cars from Brad Jones era at the Brad Jones Commodore team now. They were Falcons in those days, and as you can see there, there's the old HRT livery from '99 with Craig and I in those cars, and the livery change for Walkinshaw Andretti United this weekend with car 2 and 22. Some of the cars, in fact, I think Jonathan Webb, Jack LeBrock car as a tribute to Bob Morris as his A9X from 1979 looks fantastic. We just saw a glimpse of that at the start of this session. And there's, as I said, there it is right there. Looks fantastic, and that was a great era for one of the great drivers of our sport, Bob Morris, who won Bathurst in 1976 and won the Australian Touring Car Championship in an A9X Tirana in 1979. Really took it to the factory teams. He was sort of a quasi-factory team, but in those days, guys like Alan Grice and Bob Morris were running against the factory, and obviously Peter Brock won Bathurst that year by 6 laps in 1979, so a new lap record on the last lap. One of the most dominant performances, in fact, arguably the most dominant performance in the history of Bathurst. One of the things that Neil and I have been discussing a lot through the course of this weekend is the total dynamic difference between the Sandown 500 of old and the Sandown 500 that we're seeing this year, because it's the third event of the Pertec Enduro Cup. And normally in the first foray at Sandown, as the precursor to Bathurst, co-drivers haven't done many miles, they've got limited testing in supercar racing, and you see lots of mistakes and a big disparity in speed between the lead driver and the co-driver. This weekend, we've seen many of the co-drivers actually go faster than the lead drivers, and we're seeing far less mistakes. And this is going to be a red-hot race. We had 19 co-drivers yesterday within half a second in terms of outright speed. So we're in for a totally different dynamic, and I think that bodes well for a great race on Sunday.
I think you're 100% right about that. I said it in jest in the studio there a few moments ago, but instead of day one at school, it's kind of schoolish. So they're well versed now. It's like they've got to the end of term as co-driver combination. It'll serve them well. Most likely fewer mistakes and a pressure motor race. And a race that the way in which the driver maximums and minimums work, as McLaughlin just skates it in on the rear brake into turn one, is a little bit unusual because it's a minimum 54 lap requirement, and the start range is around about 39 odd laps on a load of fuel around here. A little bit more obviously when you don't factor in the start of the race, so you might get 40, 41 laps. That just works a bit ordinarily when it comes to balancing the strategies and then how you play the safety cars. That's a big story for tomorrow, but that'll have a very big impact. So the team's going to need to be on their toes for that. And importantly, if you've got your driver and co-drivers in complete harmony, which many of them do as a result of what you were just talking about before, these incredible times that we saw yesterday, it gives everybody the opportunity to be able to be more flexible in how they deal with that. So even though the co-drivers like to think that they can be in and out of the car pretty quickly, sometimes they end up spending a heap of time at the wheel here. Retro livery for 23 Red Racing, Milwaukee Racing entry for the Davison brothers, and this is the Irwin Tools car. Now, remembering that Mark Winterbottom, Stephen Richards, hugely experienced combination in the announcement earlier in the week that Scott Pye will be joining Charlie Schwerkolt's outfit. This celebrates the 2004 Kurt Busch NASCAR Championship victory. It's a gorgeous colour, Charlie said to me on Thursday. Looks really good in the sunshine. And I'll have to take his word for it because there hasn't been an awful lot of that so far.
It looks really good. Is that because of the style of blue, or what is it?
Blue is beautiful. It's a deep blue and it's got an iridescent flake through it, and it does look awesome in the sunshine, but we have actually been missing a key ingredient. But car's been beautifully presented, and he's really, I spotted him this morning. It was just a little bit of light rain as I came into the paddock early this morning. We had a long chat about expanding to 2 cars. They're going to take the number 97 Shane Van Gisbergen car that Shane and Garth are using successfully at the moment, and that'll be brought into the stable of cars for 2020 for Scott Pye to drive. So that's a big story for them. So the reason why we're just sort of loosely chatting about all kinds of topics is we've still got 23 odd minutes to go in this session, and a little moment down here for Fabian at turn 9. And yesterday we saw that. They're actually carrying a lot of speed down there at the moment, and that's one of the reasons why you're seeing these inside front brake locks down here. This time it's James Courtney from 6th position, the Appliances Online and Winning Appliances Mobile One Racing entries. And you don't have to readjust your set. It's not Craig Lowndes or Mark Scaife from the Holden Racing Team era. We are in 2019. You know, Larko and I still flinch every time we see those colours. So you can see just how much curb's got to be taken around here too, and you see the jib shot of the cars sweeping through turn 9 because they've got to park those cars right up on top of the curbs in a bunch of places. Brendan Hogan with his retro look this weekend. And in order to be able to straight line the fascia of those curbs, that gives you time, but you've got to be able to engineer a car to do it. It's not as easy as it sounds. Good morning to Mark Larkin.
Good morning, Neil. Now, interesting, we're having a chat this morning about just the quality of co-drivers, and yesterday it goes up year on year, and I don't think it's ever been better than this year, and such is the case. I've just done a bit of a scan of the pit lane. I mean, look at the timing monitor. There's not a single co-driver out there, remembering this is an all-driver session, so you can throw anyone in, nor have I seen a driver in the top half of pit lane anywhere, a co-driver in a race suit, even for a driver change practice. I find that quite extraordinary.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point. When you look down the computer timing here, there are no green dots, which tells us that the co-drivers are in the car. So when you see the green light illuminated behind the screens, the polycarbonate screens in these cars, that'll tell you that the co-driver's on board. This is Todd Hazelwood, had a little bit of a moment yesterday. They're celebrating the Sharon retro livery from yesteryear in the Super 2.
I think the science behind that will be that the co-drivers dominated running yesterday. They're 2 sessions to 1, and they did such a good job.
It's called pulling the blanket back to your side of the bed.
That's right.
Okay, you've had your fun. Now get out. I need to drive my race car. One of the reasons why that rule was applied was because, and you know only too well, if you leave it to the senior engineer and the primary driver, chances are the co-driver will get an out lap, an in lap, and how did it feel, and then you get berated for not busting the lap record. So typically the co-drivers end up with rotten old tyres, no time, and then a huge responsibility in the race, as the imperative is always around speed and tweaking and making things better. So the industry's kind of forced a situation where co-drivers have got to be given some decent laps, Larko.
Understand your logic, but I just still beg to differ. I just think, you know, what would be wrong? It's a new day, new track conditions, new wind conditions, just for a confidence thing, get the blood flowing before they get in the race this afternoon. I would have given them at least a couple of laps, and I certainly would have a driver change going on at the end of the start of the session.
Hey, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just suggesting what they're thinking. I'm not necessarily selling it as a concept.
I think also, Larko, and I take your point, that from yesterday afternoon, for instance, Ash Walsh did a really good job in that car. I think he ended up, where did he end up? He ended up 6th. So off the road, Cam Waters down at turn 1. He's actually fastest in the session there at the moment with a 7.95. But I take your point, if Ash Walsh went back out again at the end of yesterday, he was driving the car really well. New day, different wind condition, etc. A little bit more UV. Get a feel for the car and then hand it back over. So you might be right. I might put the white flag up and say, righto, Larko, let's just give him a free kick. Can we move on?
The minister in charge of co-drivers.
Yeah.
So Waters, Whincup, Reynolds, then Holdsworth, McLaughlin, and Holdsworth, by the way, is just on the fastest first sector. Here's what happened to Cam down the bottom. So he's
just done it himself.
Actually, yeah, he's done it himself. So he's just been wobbling around on the road trying to make tyre temperature and then out-braked himself down there. So that's a bit of an unusual one. Here's the view from the other angle. So you can see that little extension of the apron through turn 1, and then that gives way to the gravel. When you come back out the other side of that, though, and this has caused some troubles over the years, often this area gets very muddy and wet with some of the spring weather that we've dealt with back in the September period when the race was run here. And getting back on can be tricky down at 2, 3, 4. Oh, is McLaughlin's little moment at turn 1 as well. So he was able to stay on the apron and get back on with clean tyres. The other thing that happens down here in turn 2 is you get these little weeping patches of water getting through the road there. Back down in what was once upon a time the old pit lane area. So that's another thing that you've got to factor in as you race people and you move offline down there, because you can actually catch some water here and there. Greg?
Yeah, boys, I just want to sort of talk about Larko's looking up and down the pit lane before. He's made a bold statement that he searched the pit lane and could not find a co-driver that was in a race suit. I found one the first garage I looked in. So, don't really know what Larko's... Anyway, sorry, Larko. I'll move on. Dale Wood, are you going to climb in the car in the 15 Castrol Ultima that you drove so superbly yesterday?
No, I'm not. I'd like to say I was, but no, we're going to do some driver change practice at the end. Trying to organise driver change practice with Rick Kelly is really difficult. So you've got to time it perfectly. You know, he's got to have his hair right. Everything's going to be right. So he said that he was happy to do some at the end of this practice session. So I'm just doing what I'm told. I'm in my gear, ready to go.
You did claim you were better looking than him yesterday too, so he's got a bit of work to do there as well. Yep. Hey, just on what we've been talking about coming to Sandown, obviously at the other end of the Pertic Enduro Cup than normal, and just how fast all the co-drivers were yesterday, how close you all were. it's all about confidence in this game, isn't it? You're arriving Sandown better prepared than we've been before. It looks like everybody is in tune now with these cars after these first couple of race meetings.
Yeah, it does feel weird. I was driving home last night, and normally on a Friday night from Sandown, I drive home listening to Friday Night Footy, but there was nothing for me to listen to, so it's a weird time of year. I thought it was strange the co-drivers getting 2 sessions yesterday and the main driver's only getting 1, but yeah, I mean, we've driven these cars now for obviously 2 rounds. We've done Bathurst, we've done Gold Coast, so everyone's in tune with the cars, and I can't believe how tight yesterday. I had a look last night, and I think the whole field was spread by under a second, so it's seriously tight, and now these boys have got to get there and get the job done today.
Good luck with race 28.
All right, cheers, thank you.
So Neil, Mark, I know you guys have banged up with Greg now on 3-on-1, but I can confirm I've never seen Greg Murphy run up and down pit lane so fast to get a bit of intel, right? I just did speak to Mick Caruso because I was interested in getting to the bottom of it, and he confirmed exactly what you guys said, so I will support you. He just felt that having done 2 events, you know, they've kind of done their gig, you know, they're all over it. Now, that's his point, that's your point, that's their point. I don't agree. If I was a team owner, I would be doing something with my co-driver today.
Written, spoken and authorised by Mark Larkin for the Larkin Motorsport Party. Jamie Whincup was actually on a lap then that
and went straight in.
On with it.
Yeah.
That was probably going to chuck him up near the top. So it was very good in the first sector. It looked really encouraging in the second sector, and then he bailed out. So he's sitting 4th at the moment, the best of the Holdens. As we go back and look at David Reynolds, just moved up 1 spot on the lap that we picked him up. But McLaughlin, while the chat was going on about how to run the race teams, was 1 minute 7.7. So that's only just a tiny whisker away from the best time that we saw yesterday. So speed is very good. And you look at the people in the 7s at the moment, Mark. McLaughlin, Holdsworth, Waters, Whincup and Reynolds are all in the high 7s. Those drivers, 5 of them, are separated by 0.2 of a second, so it's incredibly tight at the moment. So what we saw in the co-driver sessions yesterday, both of them, is validating in the primary driver session. So when they get to the end of this, just to put a full stop on the endless chat around this, there will be 2 primary driver and 2 co-driver sessions, so it will be equal.
Ooh, just a little bit hot into turn 2. It ran wide for 3. Couldn't get it across to the change of direction. Just have a listen to this. The lowest grip. Just had it chucked sideways. Normally what can happen is you can do the Scandinavian flick and leave the opposite lock on from the right-hander and flick it to the left and climb it over the curb again, but he was just a little bit too fast and ended up running out of road. So in the meantime, when we've been talking about co-driver policy and the difference in how we may go about it, the difference in time from yesterday with a 7.7 for David Reynolds is the fastest lap ever. Scott McLaughlin has done a 7.78, so 1/100th of a second away. So what is interesting, and we also saw when Whincup come in, on our numbers, he was going to climb up, but Scott was also on a better lap before that would have broken the record from David. So we're going to see, I think, at the end of this session, a number that's pretty smart.
Possibly, because that was a little bit of rain that just fell onto the camera of this car as well. So the weather is still lurking around the horizon. There's still a lot of dark cloud around. And if there is a sprinkle of rain here today or tomorrow, that will make things pretty interesting. And we said it in the broadcast yesterday, we just want to reiterate that when we talk about the difficulties and trickery around having to drive one of these cars in the wet, we're not for a minute suggesting it's not a great idea that it rains at the moment, because obviously a lot of Australians are in terrible trouble at the moment, particularly on the mid-north coast of New South Wales with this awful fire situation, and terrible drought affecting much of the country. So it is cool, very cool down here at the moment, and quite wet in these grassy areas, and we have got some nice showers going through Victoria, which is being welcomed.
David Reynolds, who went off on that previous lap we were on board with, completed the following lap and did a 7.94. So he's gone up to 3rd. So McLaughlin, Holdsworth, Reynolds, Waters, Whincup, Winterbottom, who's been quick, James Courtney, Dip Squarley, Heimgartner, who's been very impressive this year. Fabian Coulthard, remember that Heimgartner's been announced with Rick Kelly as the drivers for Kelly Racing in their Mustang program for next year. So great news for young Andre.
So he's just moved up into 8th position in the Nissan just on that last lap when you were talking about him. Another fellow that's just been quietly achieving lately, probably hasn't got the result that he's deserved based on pace, is James Golding. Now, he's 13th out there at the moment.
Yep.
And his performance at Bathurst was potentially strong enough to get him on to the podium. He was strong on the Gold Coast as well. So just keep an eye out on him. It's essentially a local from down in the Gippsland area that spends a lot of time here in Melbourne. The workshop for Gary Rogers Motorsport is right nearby. So look at that speed trap number, watching the car track down the straight. This is heading in a southerly direction. That last sector for McLaughlin on that very lap was the best that we've seen. It was a 25.6.
He's got to work on his consistency, doesn't he? He's done a 7.78 instead of 7.79.
Crazy. So Windcup's fastest in Sector 1. McLaughlin's actually the quickest in the drag strip at the moment, up the back straight on a 16.2, and he just did the number that I mentioned in the 3rd sector to be crazy close in consistency. Alistair McVeigh in the window in conversation with David Reynolds. He's sitting 3rd at the moment. He's only 0.15 away.
A lot of speedboat effect. You see the car there. The vehicle dynamics around here are really interesting to see how certain teams go about setting their cars up, and you could argue that Triple Eight have been the best at this location now for many years. And if you have a look at the way that the car squats at the rear, and it looks like it's got a speedboat effect. The front of the car comes up, the back of the car goes down, and you have a look coming out of turn 9 there, you can see it. And that now is the fastest lap ever around this location for a supercar, a 7.54 for McLaughlin. Beautiful lap.
And that car looks better today, so they've obviously made some ground overnight with some changes, but yesterday's best time for David was a 1:7.779, and Scott's just done a 1:07.5425. So looking here for car 12 at turn 2 and 3, and that was awkward. Yeah, you see a lot of this, and then it's the rubbish that ends up on the road that often triggers more drama. So in a race when the cars are all bunched, we'll just have a listen and a look first. Cross member and the under tray and everything just makes you flinch listening to that because it's harsh. Fabian Coulthard with the lockup, couldn't get it turned in. So the trouble here in the race, and typically see a bit of this because there's often push and shove involved in this process as well, is that when you pop back out the other side, you drag water and mud and garbage, and that's just plucked the headlight lens out, done massive damage to that front under tray. Look at the amount of grass and dirt that it takes into the rad intake and the brake cooling ducts there as well. I think car number 97 we're going to see here as a replay as well. Locks the rears and does the same thing. And actually that little dip is awkward there. It's been there for ages, hasn't it? It's locks the rears. Bang! So that's Shane Van Gisbergen at the helm of that car at the moment. Garth was driving it yesterday. Actually picked the inside rear up briefly through all that. You can see just how bumpy it is down there. 2 bites of the cherry.
He had a fair go at it, didn't he?
Yep. And didn't dig in quite as much on the nose as Fabian's car. So the Kiwi 2-step down there.
Exactly. Cam Waters improves his best time from that previous 7.9's gone to 2nd with a 7.84. Now what happens with Fabian? Because Fabian stayed out after that little off at turn 3. So he's still out there. And 8.34 on that lap. So that's actually a fair trail through there now. You almost need to give that a bit of a tidy up, don't we?
And in the race, that becomes really problematic because it's also that short shoot occasion. If you catch someone napping, people try and zap up the inside. If you do it, then obviously you're going to end up sideways and rubbing on somebody getting in there.
He lost 0.8 on that last sector then, Fabian. So his time, he would have been a 7.78. So that car's obviously pretty good. He's got to get the sectors together, but that was a pretty wild last sector for him. So he's obviously made a mistake at either turn 9 or down into turn 11 into 12.
So knowing that you're an avid golfer, would the policy be here that just as it is at your favourite golf course, that drivers have to go and replace their divots?
Yeah, it's maybe a little different now.
You need a pretty decent shovel down there.
You would, wouldn't you?
A bit of time.
You've got to have the Mark Larkham, you know, when he does the safety car and he goes out and he looks at all the venues in real detail and he stops. I wouldn't advise that you stop out there at the moment. Fabian Coulthard now with a 7-7. So on the next lap, we were saying that he needed to get that last sector together. He's done the fastest sector 2, which is the drag strip up the back straight, but he has gone now to P2. Murph?
Just looking at Cam Waters, just rolled into the Monster Energy garage here. There's a green set of tyres, new fresh set of soft Dunlop sitting there ready to go on that car now. He was on just a practice set, a used set. That wasn't anything too flash that he did that lap on just before. But earlier when you saw him go off the road, the boys just told me he was actually simulating leaving the pit lane for tomorrow's race on a cold tyre, and actually did a bit of damage to that one too. It flat spotted it quite badly. It's been taken out the back. So not a simulation that he doesn't want to do the same thing tomorrow in the race. But we're about to see some real representative times. There's a lot of new tyres being thrown on cars out there at the moment.
And likewise down here at the 17 garage for Scott McLaughlin. 3 sets of tyres being thrown at this entry so far this session. A used practice set to start. Then they went to a green front, roaded rear set, and now they got a full green set on. Why is that important? They'll be back-to-backing and trying to work out what combination is going to net them the best game come quali.
Thanks, Andrew. Whilst the boys were just updating us with the info from the pit lane there, Heimgartner actually just jumped up into 3rd spot on a 7-7. He's only giving away 0.2 of a second at the moment to McLaughlin and Coulthard, who are 1 and 2 for Shell V-Power Racing. That is an awesomely quick time, that 7-7 around here. And I said it in the Fox studio just before with you, Mark, that one of the things about this place is the comfort zone because of the rock and roll movement and nature of the way the cars behave on the racetrack here. So to be able to pull a number like that, you know that you've got a car that's working well, but even more importantly, you've got a driver that's totally in front of and on top of the car in the way in which he's driving it. Because to achieve that number, knowing what's required to get off the end of the back straight here or even pull up straight down at turn 1, that's a big commitment to be able to pull those numbers. And we're seeing a lot of people bowl wides here at the moment too, aren't we?
Well, here's another one. So the same spot that we saw Van Gisbergen and Coulthard and Reynolds off goes James Courtney. So 4 of our very best operators made the same mistake in that zone. We're on board now with Van Gisbergen. Is this lap reasonable? Not yet, but Shane has been very good around here. We know in terms of confidence, and you just spoke about it, Neil, the way that he brakes the car and as flamboyant as he is over the curbs, uses a heap of inside curb there, more than anybody else.
The drone gives us a really good understanding of what that exit area looks like at turn 1, and there you can see where they blaze through, create the divots at turn 3. You're also going to get a great idea here of all these different surface changes that we've been talking about. So Van Gisbergen here at the moment is down in 16th position. This is a personal best first sector for him. He's coming up to the area at intermediate 2, which is going to be indicative of where this lap is going to sit. So his first sector is almost as good as McLaughlin's, but he's about 3 tenths away. That was close. Up the drag strip. So he's losing a bit of... and he's actually got the thing cranked sideways at 9. Nice recovery. Well done, Shane.
Yeah, Bob, this lap, mate. Pit this lap, mate. Pit this lap.
Date that I just gave you on Scott McLaughlin, it all feels pretty calm in that garage. When I look at the garage next door for the 888 entry of Whincup and Lowndes, they just did a front group adjustment, a rear camber adjustment, and what looked like a different set of dampers with springs on the rear of it before they put their set of greens on. So a lot of work going on in at Holden Red Bull Racing.
Well, now's the time to try it, and we'll be racing this afternoon, 20 laps for both the drivers and the co-drivers individually. Let's just study what happened to Shane. So he threw it in here pretty deep. He lost a bit of ground, so he kicked its rear wheel up over the curb, and then he gets out of phase on the run down the hill and just grabs the rear brake at the point of turn in. Nice recovery at that point, though, to not end up in the weeds there. Here's where the trouble starts. It makes that next right-hander at 7 harder to negotiate. 8's just a little clipping point, and then it cranks sideways through turn 9 down here, and he actually didn't make the gravel. But it's very busy here. Watch this.
Actually started because of the understeer. We'll have another look at that in a second, because the understeer at turn 6 makes the car run too wide coming off turn 6. Yeah. That's why it had that effect.
And it then makes 7, that curb that you can see there at the moment, just that harder to negotiate because you've got to make a bigger corner of it. Great shot of the extended runoff, and a lot of time, money, energy's been invested in making that area much safer. Over the years, we've seen some frightening moments with cars making contact. Better for drivers, obviously for machinery, but also better for spectators and officials, importantly, there as well. So now we'll see whether or not Cam Waters has got something for us. Check it out.
So watch the understeer. So have a look at the amount of positive lock he's got on there. So he runs too wide, and that's what caused it.
Well, did you hear how much throttle angle he had in the background, though? So the understeer was also, I think, as a result of having to try and hustle it through there. Actually, I just picked up on the radio, he's saying he's really battling.
Yeah.
So he's not happy with that thing at the moment. Holdsworth, meantime, we picked him up in the Botlow car. Fastest for him from a personal standpoint is both sectors 1 and 2, and his cumulative number at the moment is projecting pretty well. This is going to get him very close to McLaughlin if he keeps up on this trajectory. Chasing a 7.5 for McLaughlin. And he actually moves up a spot.
P2, mate, P2. You just dropped a little bit of time at turn 6 there, otherwise that would have been P1.
That's very impressive. So he's only 9/100ths of a second away from McLaughlin. So at the moment you've got McLaughlin, Holdsworth and Coulthard. The background is that Van Gisbergen's got a bit of a battle going at the moment. He's down in 16th and hasn't stitched quite the lap together that he wants. We're inside 2 minutes from the end of the session. Best of the rest at the moment is Heimgartner. He's 4th in the Nissan as we pick up Lee once more, and another little off here down at turn 1. Oh, just underscores that point I made about just how wet it is off the racetrack at the moment. So
now that you don't want to arrive next. Well done, Anton De Pasquale. That was excellently done. He drove it purposely around the inside of the corner so that he didn't put water on the racetrack and affect the next car. That was really well done. Great job, young bloke. That was excellent.
Had he pressed on there, you cut all the water and the dirt back onto the racetrack, and
The next car would have gone off.
Yeah, gee whiz, he had a monstrous lock up there, so that will have well and truly marked that tyre. And there's a policy with how the cars are to rejoin down there as well, and that'll be briefed for the drivers. So he's actually shallow of the racing line there. Big lock up, gravel, grass, mud.
Watch all this come over the front in a sec. So as he goes to rejoin over here, watch this. This is how wet it all is, right there. So then he had the choice of going out onto the road, and he turns it hard right and runs around the inside so that he doesn't put water on the racetrack. And now, when he does go onto the racetrack, he's offline when he does it. So that was really well done. Great presence of mind.
And he was actually battling to get it out of here. Look at the amount of wheel spin. You could hear it in the background. So once he had a bit of purchase and some grip, he used it to great advantage. So Anton De Pasquale currently sits at the moment in 11th position. No shock, he's gone back into the pit lane, and trouble down here also for the Techno Autosports entry with the beautiful old Bob Morris colours. Car number 19's down the order at the moment. Jack LeBrock's at the helm, he's 25th. Back to 888. Whincup, he's sitting in 4th, and he's on a 1.77286. He's only 0.18 of a second away from McLaughlin. And Whincup, actually, we just had a peek over his shoulder. That first sector split for him is the best we've seen. Now, Jamie may well go to the top here. He could knock off the lap record braking speed that McLaughlin's achieved. Reynolds just moved up 1 spot into 6th. So there's a bit of intensity around this session at the moment as they rehearse their run later on today.
Whincup's on for a really good lap, as you said. So he's only 0.05 away in sector 2. This is where the car's been very nice. Way it puts its power down and rides the curb. He's a little bit too deep into the second last corner. He had to run it too far to the left. What's it do? See where the Whincup pops up. He does. 7.54 plays a 7.54. This is going to be unbelievable.
Great competition between McLaughlin and Whincup in that session, to be separated by 17 1,000ths of a second. Extraordinary. Look at the trap speeds also. So they're everything's matched. So there's tiny fractions of variation between them in the different sectors, and Waters just jumped up into 3rd. Coulthard's got a fast mid-sector, faster than anybody else. That is crazy. So it's a 107.5425 for McLaughlin. Check the replay. Only just scampered through there. And then an 07.5442 for Whincup, and then off and wide down here at 9. I'm, on the Hino Hub, I talk about what are the considerations. I'm definitely going to put unforced errors up there as something that's going to have to be watched come Sunday.
Yeah.
See the lock light up on the dash. That tells him that, and he well and truly would have been aware of it. You can smell it and feel it. The front left Dunlop tyre be howling in protest. So he's wandered wide down there at turn 9, and the lock light told the story. Great session. The last practice session before Armour All qualifying, that comes up today at 12:25 local time, and then we've got 2 races, sprint races this afternoon, one for the co-drivers, one for the primary drivers. That sets the tone and the grid for the Armour All pole for tomorrow's Penrite Oil Sandown 500 kilometres. Congratulations to both McLaughlin and Whincup and their teams. We're witnessing some great motor racing at the moment and a great competition between those organisations, crazy tight margins. And then heading up the next group includes Anton De Pasquale. That was a very enjoyable session, a bit of a taste test for what's to come later today, Murph.
Yeah, we'll just quickly grab Anton De Pasquale right here. Sorry, tap me on the shoulder, mate. I know you're getting into the debrief straight away. Not the finish to that session you were really looking for. We saw the lock-up going down into turn 1. Just tell us what went wrong.
I'm not really too sure. I probably pressed the brake pedal a tiny bit harder, and there's not much grip out there, and it just smoked the front and off we go. So, yeah, first lock-up of the weekend, and it's probably at a crucial time, but it's all right, we'll clean it up and have another crack in quali.
I saw that you did a bit of roading as well, sort of took the green off a few sets of tyres. Was that on a green set then, or was that a roaded set?
That was a green set. Obviously, we'll have a few tyres we can play around with going into quali, so smoked obviously one tyre's in the bin now, but yeah, we've still got some for quali in the race and so on, so we'll press on. Pretty
good presence of mind there. Scapey was talking about it, just to stay off the racetrack going down into turn 2. You decided to cut back across on the grass. Was that your decision, or was that a directive from the team?
No, I'm trying to stay out of everyone's way. The grass is really wet, so you couldn't actually almost make it to where you have to go, so you just got to get back to the road so you can keep moving. But then, yeah, there's obviously a few cars, didn't want to ruin their session, so try and get out of the way as best I can. I think I did a half a right job, but I don't think I ruined anyone's lap, thankfully, so it's all good.
Did you get a read on the car for qualifying?
Yeah. We had a few runs. We weren't too bad. Probably would have been a bit better if we had another run, but that's all part of it, so we'll give it a bit of tune-up and have a crack.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks.
Scott McLaughlin simulating qualifying runs there and a new lap record. Happy with that performance?
Yeah, we've got to do that in qualifying, obviously, but yeah, absolutely. The car's feeling really good. It's been good, really, straight out of the truck. So it's all you can ask out of a new car. It's been a tough few weeks. So obviously, just want to, for these guys, I just want to, reward them somehow in qualifying.
I noticed there that you ran a couple of different new tyre options, green on the front at one point, roaded on the rear, and then full green at the end. Were you looking for something out of that going into quali?
No, it's just what we had allocated, obviously, with the shunt at Gold Coast. We had tyres from it, but we scrapped 2 of them because most of them ended up in the crowd. So, yeah, look, I felt balance-wise it was very similar on both sets. So, yeah, we'll probably just do our normal thing and then, see how we go.
17 thousandths of a second pipping Jamie Whincup. That's a tight margin.
That's all you need.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks.
And a little further down the lane, Cameron Waters only 6/100ths of a second off being the fastest there, mate. Very strong. Mick Caruso strong yesterday. You guys definitely winning potential here this weekend.
100%. We've been in the mix the last few Enduros and the cars come on strong. Watch your back, mate. So, yeah, pretty happy then. My session yesterday, I wasn't that happy with the car, but, yeah, the boys did a really good job to make it a bit better. Cruz was happy by the end of yesterday, and, yeah, we're thereabouts. So did that time right at the end on the 4th lap and no toe. So car's got potential. We just got to keep chipping away.
No toe. That doesn't mean he hasn't got any toes. That means he didn't get a toe along the back straight. Thanks. I'm just going to try and grab Mick Caruso just quickly. Mick, we had a quick chat during that session there. A little bit surprised. No co-drivers getting in, but you gave me an inference as a co-driver. You're quite comfortable, confident in the car. Happy where you're at for today.
Yeah, look, I'm really happy. I mean, obviously doing the last 2 events has been really good. Feel very good. I mean, obviously I did a majority of the laps on Sunday at Gold Coast, so did all the heavy lifting that day. But, I mean, these guys know exactly where they need to put the car, particularly in qualifying. Is going to be very crucial here this weekend. So get that car in a similar position to what he finished then, and hopefully I can keep it there and hand it back over.
I reckon you guys look very strong. Best of luck.
Thank you.
And looking very strong too, continuing some really good consistent form as far as outright speed, mate. Andre, inside the top 10. The times out there are just outrageous, aren't they?
Yeah, no, it's so close. It's to be a couple of tenths off the fastest is not too bad. And, the old farewell tour for the Nissan Altima is going pretty good so far. So, yeah, really happy with how it's going. Obviously, it's just practice there. And I just stuffed up my green tyre lap there as well. So yeah, it's an interesting track out there. Not a lot of people are actually getting a big gain from green tyres. It seems like maybe trying to get a scrub set or something as the go. So yeah, we'll look at the data, see what we can do. But if we can end up somewhere up there in qualifying, it'll be yeah, really good for Bryce to start the race.
You say you didn't get the best out of it. Where was the little bit that you thought was lacking?
I just sort of locked up the inside left, going through turn 4 or 5, and just went a bit wide there, so I lost a bit of time there. So yeah, still a little bit.
Just looking at turn 6, see a lot of in-car stuff. Obviously, the approach to over the hill there is on a brand new surface, and then it changes quite dramatically to an old surface. It looks like the cars do have a bit of an understeer through that section. How hard is it trying to judge the right amount of speed at the turn-in?
Yeah, I haven't really nailed it at all this weekend. Every time you go through there, it's slightly different. It's because you have such good turn-in initially on the new surface, and then as soon as you get on the older stuff, it tends to push, or it depends what angle your car's on when you hit that surface. There's a whole lot of things, so it's almost a bit of a luck of the draw there if you can keep it tight, because a lot of the time it'll just push wide. But yeah, making it very interesting.
Good luck for qual.
Cheers, thank you.
Shane Van Gisbergen, mate, we rode on board with you there as you went through turn 9, which looked like a whole heap of understeer on board.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Got plenty front, but yeah, just trying to keep up with it.
There's a lot of chat this weekend about the extra speed that's being carried over turn 6, and then a little bit of timing involved in how you get through turn 9. Is that your issue, or do you feel like your car's